Hello, welcome to Antinatalism This week. There was a video posted by a channel called MentisWave, and they seem to have completely misunderstood the arguments for antinatalism. I am not going to do a full response video for that because Lawrence has done a fantastic job of it. I am going to select specific claims in that video as examples to show the extent of misunderstanding they have got about arguments for antinatalism, and then also to show how they have mixed these misunderstandings to create further confusion.
The claim is that the pain of existence is far greater than non-existing and not outweighed by the pleasure that comes with existing.
That is not the claim at all. Here is a sentence from Benatar's book, and I quote: "One of the implications of my argument is that a life filled with good and containing only the most minute quantity of bad, a life of utter bliss, adulterated only by the pain of a single pinprick, is worse than no life at all." This is the conclusion of David Benatar's asymmetry. It does not need pain to outweigh pleasures in life. In fact, the asymmetry does not depend on amounts of pain and amounts of pleasures in life at all. The mere presence of pain or harm in and of itself is enough to prove that coming into existence is a net harm. And that is because no one is deprived of pleasures or benefits of life before coming into existence.
And therefore, by bringing children into the world, you are committing an act of evil because the non-existent individual did not consent to their creation.
The consent argument holds even if one is benefited by being brought into existence. Schifrin and Benatar have written in great detail on this subject. In short, you cannot assume consent to harm someone just to provide them with greater benefit. For example, if I chop your arm and then provide you with $1 billion and a robotic arm which is even better than your biological arm, I'm still violating the principle of consent. On the other hand, if I chop your arm when you're in coma to save you from even more severe suffering, then it is ethical to assume the consent because I am trying to reduce your suffering. So the consent argument still holds even if you're benefited by being brought into existence. There is a lot of other nonsense in this video, and that I'm guessing because they have not read the book properly. David Benatar's book is not a book you can read while sunbathing on a beach in an hour. Next is a new thesis published by someone called Simon Fridh from UMEA University, which I think is a Swedish university. The thesis is called Better Never to Have Been, a critique of David Benatar's axiological asymmetry argument for antinatalism. Benatar has claimed that his axiological asymmetry also solves four other asymmetries as shown on this diagram. At the center of this diagram is Benatar's axiological asymmetry. Surrounding that are four asymmetries which Benatar says are solved by his axiological asymmetry. So going clockwise from the top, the asymmetry of procreational duties is the asymmetry where we have a duty to not bring miserable people into existence, but we don't necessarily have a duty to bring happy lives into existence. Then there is retrospective beneficence asymmetry, which says that it is valid to regret having brought suffering child for her sake, but it is not valid to regret failure to bring a happy child for her sake. The asymmetry of distant suffering and absent happy people. So if there are some people which are suffering at a distance from us, it is still bad, but we don't necessarily regret that there are no happy people, let's say on Mars. And then there is asymmetry of prospective beneficence. It is strange having a child just to benefit that child because that child is not deprived of anything before coming into existence. But it is not strange not having a child just to avoid her suffering. This is the root of non-identity problem also. So these are the four asymmetries which Benatar has claimed are solved by his axiological asymmetry. And the thesis is about refuting that claim. At some point, Simon says that some of the asymmetries don't even exist. And if they do, Benatar's axiological asymmetry does not really explain them. That is what the thesis is about. Now, axiological asymmetry also solves some other problem. It solves non-identity problem. It also solves some contradictions in population ethics like repugnant conclusion or mere addition. And more importantly, the axiological asymmetry proves that coming into existence is a harm. None of these aspects are focus of the thesis. Next is a book published by Aribiah, David Attoe, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that name correctly. The book is called The Question of Life's Meaning, An African Perspective. The author concludes the book by a chapter called Indifference, and the future of human existence towards an antinatalist destiny and species suicide, where they say that if life is meaningless, is it then moral to procreate? And if life is meaningless, is it valuable or is it immoral to advocate for what I term species suicide? In my answer to these questions, I claim that one must adopt an indifferent approach. That is, one that is not averse to procreating or non procreating, living as a species or dying as a species. Now, I think they are conflating the ideas of existential nihilism and moral nihilism. Existential nihilism is that our existence is fairly meaningless, the universe is indifferent, and our existence is just a consequence of mindless cause and effect cycle. So that's existential nihilism. Moral nihilism is that we should act in any sort of way, it doesn't matter. And these two are different ideas. Moral nihilism does not necessarily follow from existential nihilism. And I think they're conflating these two things together. But that is only my guess because the book is behind the paywall and I've not read the book. Next is an article from Indonesian journal, the name of which I cannot pronounce, but you can see it on the screen. The article claims to reflect on how Benatar's arguments for antinatalism complement some Christian theological views on death and immortality. Conducted by Jürgen Moltmann's Theological Views, and I don't know if I'm saying that name right, on death and immortality, this article attested that there is no significant contradiction between Benatar's philosophical views and Moltmann's Christian theology on death and immortality, and can even contribute to one another. This conclusion also echoes that philosophy and theology can go hand in hand without contradicting each other. There was this article published on many websites talking about the situation of vasectomy in the UK. The article says that the procedure of vasectomy has got more common than what it was in the past, but some young men still face some obstacles, like some doctors in NHS reject them thinking that they will change their mind. The article specifically notes that, and I quote, traditionally the typical age of a man seeking a vasectomy would be 35 to 40 years old. However, we are finding more and more younger men in their 20s who are looking for a permanent method of contraception, which is really a good news. Finally, a new organization called Antinatalism Advocacy is organizing an antinatalism conference in the month of December. The conference is going to be free, it's going to be virtual, and the schedule will be out by 2nd November. I will be touching on this again as the list of speakers come out. At the moment, only David Pierce's name seems to have been finalized. And those were the stories for antinatalism this week. Let me know if I've missed anything. Talk to you next week. Thank you.